Welcome to Skills for Startups, the podcast dedicated to helping founders master essential skills to be successful. I'm your host, Avery Del Grasso. From day one, founders are told to boldly innovate in all facets of their businesses, including their communications. Yet, as business leaders, we can often find ourselves playing it safe by interacting within small, self-affirming groups where everyone praises each other. Naturally, this feels great and validating. But as it turns out, it's actually an illusionary bubble called the entrepreneurial echo chamber. Today, we explore the echo chamber and learn why it doesn't build real trust with customers, how to step outside of your comfort zone and build real reputation. Our guest today is Juliana Pulecio. For more than 17 years, she has been the strategic force behind the public relations and communications for leading multi-billion-dollar international corporations. With a master's degree in PR and communications management, Juliana shares her extensive expertise to help us find our way out of the entrepreneurial echo chamber. Hi, Juliana. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here with you.
So could you tell us more about the entrepreneurial echo chamber?
That's when founders only hear information from the same closed ecosystem, like investors, peers, startup media, and pretty much everyone who's around it. So that's the chamber where no reputation is being built, but reputation is looping all the time.
How does the echo chamber affect startup founders?
You start chasing vanity metrics instead of real traction, and that doesn't help when you're building reputation. It's pretty much outsiders are seeing hype without accountability, which deepens negatively this personal risk where founders lose the ability of hearing and they get used to hearing yes. The echo chamber kills more startups than competition will ever kill. And that comes because when you're just hearing the same things over and over again, you tend to forget what's going outside the chamber and you stop risking to move outside, to get new challenges, to hear what your actual customers will say, or also you can prevent yourself from getting greater ideas to make your startup even bigger and better.
How can I recognize if I'm in an entrepreneurial echo chamber?
First of all, you start hearing the same words in the same language all over, like disruptive, game changer, innovation. When all that is around you and you just hear the same things over and over about what you're building, then you can get the sense that you're in a chamber. Also, when your network is too close, when you start pitching to the same investors, same peers repeatedly, when you start getting the same comments from the same people, you start going to the same podcast that the people around you is going, that's another big red flag. When you're not getting pushback, when you're not getting feedback, when you're just getting everybody saying that you're doing great, that you're doing amazing, that you're just building the next big thing, then you have to question yourself if you're actually in the chamber or you're in a very rare path when everything seems to be smooth. So you have to start looking of how to expand myself to start getting the real sense of what I'm doing and why am I telling this story.
What's a good way for me to know who is giving me constructive feedback from the outside of this echo chamber and who's just being harsh or downplaying my business?
I think the main thing is you have to understand that you know your product more than anyone else. Know your goal, where you are at the moment, your stage. You don't want advice about where you're heading, if you're heading on the right direction, if you're talking to the right people, because you are the only one who know where you want to go. To identify who is just trying to put me down instead of just giving me an advice and real feedback, you just have to understand, is this advice helping me to move forward? Is this advice going to make a positive change that my service will be better tomorrow? You don't have to agree with every single advice, but the fact that you get into different ecosystems or sectors when people don't think about you, you are on the right path to move outside the chamber, because even if they don't agree with you and even if you don't take their advice, reality is that you are going to be seeing different perspectives. And at the end, that's what's going to help you make your startup product or service.
Can you give me some examples of how I can make myself uncomfortable? Because I know I don't like receiving negative criticism as much as the next guy. So how can I break outside my comfort zone as a startup founder?
Well, first of all, you have to understand that you don't need cheerleaders. You need challengers. Those are the ones who are going to help you grow. So try to find places that make you feel even more uncomfortable, meaning go to and talk to a skeptical journalist. Get the hard questions. That's where you are actually building reputation, because that's where the true growth comes. So I understand it's hard getting criticism. I understand it's hard getting negative feedback on something you truly believe is going to change someone's life. But reality is that if you don't get it on an early stage, you will get it on a later stage. And that's when it's going to cost you more money and time and effort. So I think once you start, you have to be comfortable with negative feedback, but don't lose sight of the goal, because there's a big difference between just trying to please everybody by changing what you want to do. You have to work more on your sense of perspective, because perspective, it's something that when you're in the chamber, you don't see the big picture. It's easier to get frustrated when you're seeing that everybody is building something amazing. When you go to a meeting where there are a lot of entrepreneurs and people building things, you're gonna see they're all building amazing things. Their ideas are great. They're all building something great. The difference is that there's a group of people who are willing to accept hard feedback and they are willing to make big changes, and there's a group of people who won't. And you should know by now who of those will eventually survive. So I think you just have to look for it, and you have to do it intentionally.
I want to get one level even more specific. So I'm trying to think of an example. Let's say I'm building a web app for marketing agencies. Who might be inside and outside of my echo chamber?
Okay, so in that example, you have there's one part of the chamber that is same for every single entrepreneur, and it's the entrepreneurial ecosystem. That one, you all belong to that chamber. You cannot get away from it. If you're creating something and you find another founder, he's part of your chamber, and that's not bad. It's good. But when you're needing hard feedback, maybe you want to get a second opinion outside the chamber. And then for that marketing example that you were saying, all the marketing ecosystem, that's part of your chamber once you get comfortable pitching to them. So the first time you go and pitch a marketing team about your product, your service, or whatever you're selling to them, you're outside the chamber because you're not used to things like that. When you've already been doing this for a while and you're talking to a lot of marketing people and you know what their answer is going to be and you know what they're going to say to you, that becomes part of your chamber. So how to stay away from that? Then you might want to talk to people outside the marketing area, but that's related to marketing. General managers, maybe commercial teams. They are linked to marketing in a way. They work with the marketing team. They might be interested in what you have to say, but they're not your final audience outside your chamber. And maybe you want to say that even to family members who have no idea about marketing. And I think you don't have to be so specialized about this. Just try to go to a family dinner. Just think about Thanksgiving. Many people inside a family gathering. They all have different mindsets. They all have different backgrounds. They get together once a year. And if you start talking about your product or service, you're going to see the outside of the chamber working for you, because you're going to be people saying, hey, this is interesting. And maybe some people is going to say, well, I don't think it's going to work. You're going to get a lot of different opinions. And that's a way to start feeling uncomfortable in a safe place because you're with family members. So, my advice for entrepreneurs, and I do that with my customers all the time with my clients, I sit with them and say, have you sitting in your family dinner about explaining your product or service? What is the feedback you're getting? Well, they don't understand what I do. Well, maybe you're not sending the right narrative. So maybe you don't have to work on the product. Maybe you have to work on the story, how you sell your narrative. I think that's a very simple exercise that can save a lot of headaches to a lot of founders. Because once you're out there, people will not be nice to you. And reality is that people is just not waiting for what you're building. People have their lives. Nobody's waiting to see what you're building. So if you keep inside the chamber, whenever you go out, because you have to go out to sell your product and to grow, then you're going to have a lot of disillusion and you're going to be finding out that you were building things that were not real. You were building for a group of people who are not going to become your customers.
That makes sense. From what you described, it sounds like the echo chamber is a dynamic process that changes over time. Could you talk more in depth about how that echo chamber changes over time and what might make it better or worse?
Well, it grows like a cycle of a human being. When you're just starting, doing that pitch to your family members is just good enough to start building. Then you're going to have to work with your employees. Sometimes you don't see that as part of the chamber, or sometimes you don't see them as outside the chamber just because they're working for you. But if you are the CEO of a company, maybe try to sit with someone from the customer service team. They will have a different perspective because they're talking to customers all the time. It really depends on the stage you're in. If you are on a later stage, then maybe going outside the chamber is looking of those people who don't believe your product is good enough, because you already proved to one group of people that it was good enough. You already have a base of customers. You're already selling. You're feeling comfortable. Now, what you're going to be doing is going back and try to reach out to those people who still don't believe in you and understand why. It doesn't mean that they have to advocate for you, but at least they should understand it.
In your article about the echo chamber and discussing this topic, you also talked about the idea of performative discomfort. Could you talk a little bit more about what that is?
When I wrote the article, I wanted to give a better, like a bigger overview about the chamber. So this is pretty much when founders act like they're being bold or uncomfortable, but only in inside safe places, like they pitch yet another step, a startup event where their audience already knows what they're saying and is ready to applaud. So it looks like they're taking risk, but in reality, they're just recycling the same story to the same audience. And this matters because true growth requires real discomfort. You have to explain your product or service to people who don't care, who are skeptical. I think performative discomfort keeps founder in a comfort zone, and it's just give you the sense of just try to feel uncomfortable when you're really not. The only one who really knows about when you're moving out of the chamber, and the only ones who can actually tell if I'm in a position of comfort or not, is the founder. And good thing is that when you identify that, it's easier for you to have a clear difference between when real discomfort is and when it's not. And when you don't feel comfortable at all, when you want to run away, when you don't want to give that pitch, when you don't want to talk to that person, that's where you should stay, because that's where you're going to grow and that's where your reputation is going to be built.
So, if I wanted to break out of the entrepreneurial echo chamber and make sure that I'm not participating in performative discomfort, what are some actionable steps that I can start taking today to do that?
Well, first, change the room. Look for events or forums outside the startup bubble or the sector bubble. Try to look, for example, chambers of commerce. There's nothing more non-startup than chambers of commerce. They both work with different group of people, small business and all that, but they're completely the opposite. So try to go there. Try to work in that scenario. Step 2, I will say, talk to skeptics, not to fans. Yeah, of course, you want to talk to your fans. You want to talk to people who are willing to go with you. But those who don't want to hear your story, I think that's where you have to pay more attention. 2 metrics that I think you have to look. If you're a data-driven founder, if your retention is just numbers are not on your side, then what's wrong? Why my customers are leaving? Why am I not able to keep them here? And churn. So deep dive on those, because you have a problem there. And maybe you want to understand what's going there. Maybe having surveys, you want to understand why they use it and they're not using it anymore. So that's another step you can take. And also, I think diversify the media. It's important. Move outside the same podcast. Like if you're used to hear the same entrepreneurial podcast or how to build your company from zero to whatever, and we've all heard of it. There are tons of podcasts for startups. Maybe you want to start hearing something about psychology of a human being. How do you trigger people's minds to try something that makes you feel uncomfortable? That's part of growing. That's part of your echo chamber. I think if you always feel comfortable, you're not growing, not growing in reputation. I've seen it. Reputation only comes when you're in discomfort. Reputation only comes when you're uncomfortable. You don't build a reputation by feeling comfortable all the time and being surrounded by people who are telling you how great you are. If you go to a place where everybody is in a black tie and you're the only one with sneakers and jeans, I'm pretty sure everybody will be looking at you and everybody will be trying to see how you react in every single step of the way. So it's your choice if you decide to be the guy or the girl who was scared and decide to run away, or that one who took advantage of the attention and was the star of the night. So I think once you do that, it will be easier for you to build your reputation around a story that's strong enough that helps not just your company, but yourself growth outside your chamber.
That's a great way of putting it. So I know we've talked about a lot of the short term benefits. If I'm successful at breaking out of the echo chamber, what are some long term benefits? What would be the ultimate win for breaking out of the comfort zone?
Well, first of all, I think you get stronger credibility. You get a sustainable reputation. You get market resilience. Talent attraction is another thing. And eventually, you will get stronger valuation because all those things they add, and when you have a stronger team, then it will be easier to achieve more things to get market resilience, which is the ability to survive downturns and crises. So if you train yourself to be in this position, you get sharper feedback, you get a credibility boost, you get better investor trust, you get early customer traction, and you get a focus reset that forces you to track real metrics and not just vanity. Besides your business and operational metrics, another thing that I always talk about is legacy. There's one framework that I work with my clients that is the arc of reputation. And in that framework, I have 5 different phases. The last phase is the legacy one. So you're building reputation across all the other 4 areas, all the 4 phases. But at the 5th phase, you're building your legacy. I think it's important to mention it here because if you keep inside the bubble, you're not going to move forward that much in the arc of reputation. You're just going to stay the same place over and over and over again. If you want to reach legacy, if you want to build that product or service that everybody in your sector will look at as this is where I want to go, this is where I want to head, this is they're doing things right, then to build legacy, you have to build on discomfort across the whole path.
Those sound like some great long term benefits that would help any founder or business. Where can a startup founder or professional go if they need some advice or tools or resources to help them break out of this echo chamber? Who can they go to?
Well, I think you have to look for mentors outside your bubble, experience operators in other industries. Maybe something that works in an industry can be used in your industry. I know, for example, that the medical industry uses a lot of insight from the aviation industry. And that comes because they have achieved this level of safety and double checking and procedures. So when you are in an industry and you want to achieve something, try to look in another industry. They might be doing something good, not necessarily what you're doing, but I'm pretty sure something in their industry can work for your industry. So that would be first advice. Second advice will be trade press, publications to talk to decision makers, not just startup peers. Try to move away from startup peers for a moment. And that's what I'm keep saying. It's not being the outsider all the time. It's just try to find a place where you're going to be the outsider and then go back to your bubble, build from there. Third one, I would say try to create networks where failure and mistakes are shared as openly as success. And I know startups tend to talk about their mistakes. That's common on the startups ecosystem. But when you do it intentional, not just by the sake of getting attention, and you have like a honest conversation, a lunch or a meal, or you just sit for a coffee with someone and talk about your mistakes, that's also helping you grow, especially if those mistakes don't necessarily come from the same industry. And also, I think strategic communication support. I think it's important. Communications are important. I know that startups don't focus that much on comms and public relations on the early stage because they have tons of things to work on. But I think you have to put intention to the communication, and you have to understand the communication. It's relevant and it's important. And you have to work on your story. You have to be the story and the storyteller. And I don't think many founders understand that your story is as valuable as the way you tell it. And that's also part of a sales pitch. If you want to sell, you have to have a great story. If you want to grow your startup, you also have to have a great message, a great story that is bulletproof. So do that pitch in your family dinner. Try to keep it sharp in your story, until you actually have such a strong story that you start getting people who understand, and then they will eventually become advocates.
Thank you, Juliana, for sharing your expertise and some amazing insights with us today.
Thank you, Avery, for inviting me here. Happy to be with you today.
If you're interested in learning more about how you can strategically improve PR and communications for yourself or your business, check out Juliana's Substack, or you can purchase her new book called Reputation is Everything: Why Smart Founders Invest in Public Relations. Links will be in the description. The Skills for Startups podcast is offering a free guide on customer discovery. Download yours today at skillsforstartupspodcast.com. Skills for Startups is part of the Prescription Podcasts family of podcasts. To listen to more interesting stories, including those that are shaping the future of our health, visit prescriptionpodcasts.com.